Greetings. This is John Jackson Miller. I am the founder and curator of Comichron.com, the world's largest public database of comic book sales figures. And we have here the first look at the sales charts for April 2018. Now, these lists come from Diamond Comic Distributors, and we've worked a little magic on them to come up with the overall size of the business and some other interesting facts that we're willing to share to you in advance of when we do get the final estimates for the actual comics themselves on Comichron.com later on. Now, what's interesting about April 2018 is it is 25 years exactly after April 1993, which was the biggest month in the history of the comics industry dollar-wise. We talk about that in another video that's here on our Comichron channel on YouTube. And one of the things that you'll notice immediately is that was the month that Superman came back to life after being temporarily dead in Adventures of Superman 500. Skip ahead 25 years and 500 issues, and we have a different series, Action Comics 1000. This is a comic book that we knew was going to be huge. And it turned out to be that, and it turned out to be some pretty good news for a comics market that has needed it. Action 1000 is the top comic book of the month. Action 80 Years of Superman, the hardcover, is the top graphic novel of the month. And what's worth of note here immediately is that this is our first month in a good long while in which both comics and graphic novel sales both went up in terms of dollars. In fact, we have to go all the way back to August of 2016, which was the month of the DC Rebirth launch, or it's in the middle of that launch, to find a month where both categories went up. We have the market sitting at $45.84 million, or almost $46 million in terms of all comics and graphic novels shipped to the comic shops in North America. That's an increase of 19% over March, which was a month that also had just 4 weeks, or 4 shipping weeks. But it's an 11% increase over last April, which again also had 4 shipping weeks. That's pretty big news. It is the first up month of this year, and as often happens, I've said frequently that the volumes are so low in the winter in the comic shop market that frequently a good April will wipe out any losses that took place in an entire winter quarter. We didn't quite get to that point, but the year-to-date shortfall is now down to below 4% thanks to the sales this particular month. Action 1000 DC had reported that we were likely going to see in the 500,000 copy range when the numbers come out. That may still happen. We don't know whether or not part of that's going to be in the British or overseas copies or not, or in the copies that come outside of the April shipping timeframe. But either way, it's still a huge number, and it didn't account for the entire increase over last April. But it's a good chunk of it. Again, though, I do caution people not to simply say, well, take that comic book out of it and what do you have? The fact of the matter is every single month has, 1 or 2 comics in it that is sort of an outlier, the one book that has much more attention than all the other ones. And the point is that there's the money in the business to actually order all these books in the first place. That's, I think, the key. It's sort of idle to say, well, if not for that last 3-point shot, we would have won the game. You can't remove a single title or 2 titles or 3 titles out of the whole scheme of things. It is the case that there was $45.84 million out there to be spent by retailers, or at least they bought that much worth of material. They of course buy it at a discount from that level, but it is a level that we haven't seen in a while, and that's a good thing. This is actually the best 4-week month we've had since October of 2016. It's sort of a nice change of direction that has sort of been building all winter long. My previous reports, we've said, that things are not necessarily getting better, but they're not getting worse as fast. This is actually a move towards the positive. And this is a good thing. You'll notice immediately that the number 2 and number 3 books are part of Marvel's Amazing Spider-Man. The sort of the wrap-up, go down swinging of the end of Dan Slott's run on the series. And then we have Hunt for Wolverine, that's a debut at number 4. And then Batman, number 44, is the 5th place book. And, we'll take a quick look here at, sort of the month to month. We don't pay that much attention to month to month, April versus March, except to say that same number of weeks. This is a lot bigger month, April, than March was, up 19% in dollars. The more important comparison is going to be year to year, April 2018 versus 2017. You'll see that graphic novels up in dollars, comics up significantly in dollars, and in units as well. And then the total is up 11%. Versus the previous April. And then when we look at the year-to-date, 2018 versus 2017, didn't quite completely make up what was lost in the earlier part of the year, but we went a good ways toward it. Let's take a look quickly at the market shares. I encourage people not to pay quite as much attention to the horse race, and of course, as I record this, it's right before the Kentucky Derby, so that may be an ill-timed piece of advice. But the more important thing about market shares always is how publishers compare with their previous year's experience or previous months, not so much about how comics publishers compare with one another. And what you can't see here, because I don't provide these kind of internal numbers that I'm able to dig out of the math very frequently. But one of the things is that we have several publishers that are doing a lot better than they were. And then we have, for example, DC, which had been doing fairly well all winter long. It continued to do so in April. DC up 18% over its previous April in dollars. Marvel up 19% by my math versus its previous April from last year. That was back when Secret Empire was just starting out. DC, its April of last year was when the Button comics were coming out, sort of beginning that whole storyline. Outside of Marvel and DC, there are some publishers that did even better comparatively with their April of last year. IDW, Dynamite, Oni in particular, all had a much better April this year than last year, at least according to the numbers as we can look at them by comparing the dollar shares that were put out by Diamond with that overall dollar figure that we have computed. To look quickly at the sales charts themselves, the Diamond releases this information two ways in terms of units and also dollars now. We can see that, again, Action 1000, number 1, as we had already covered the top 5 here, we can go down and see a couple more Marvel launches. Venomized, number 1. Domino, number 1. 6th and 8th place. The other Batman is in there at 7th. Captain America, 700. That's yet another anniversary issue. In 9th. Walking Dead is our first Image book at 10th. Looking at it by dollars, One of the things that pops onto the chart that we didn't see on the unit chart was Infinity Countdown #2, because that's a $5 book. Shows up here in the dollar chart, but otherwise the dollar chart looks more or less like the unit chart, with the exception of that, and also with Hunt for Wolverine, which being at $6 ends up vaulting over one of the Amazing Spider-Man issues. Looking at graphic novels quickly, 80 Years of Superman hardcover. This is our top selling book, both in units and in dollars. Paper Girls, Volume 4, the top selling trade paperback. Everything in our charts is a paperback unless it says HC for hardcover. Top hardcover from Marvel is Thanos, the Infinity Siblings. This was that book that was part of a little bit of a controversy there, having to do with the Amazon digital platforms. What we'll see here is that in the print form, in terms of the number of copies that were ordered in by retailers, it still comes in third. We also have coming out in this particular month, Saga. I remember there was a sale at Diamond, or a promotion at Diamond, for all the various Saga editions. 2 Sagas make the top 10. Then we have the graphic novels by dollars, and this is where some of the big ticket books are going to show up. Harley Quinn and the Gotham City Sirens Omnibus, $75. Another Marvel Masterworks, Avengers Volume 18, shows up here. Superman Exile and Other Stories, $125. That was the top reordered book a few weeks back. That makes an appearance on this chart, and we'll see the actual units for these once we run the estimates here shortly. And then finally, Diamond releases its charts saying, how many different titles they put out, how many things appeared in their sales charts for the first time. And what we see here is that the number of comics shipped is actually very close. I think it's just one below the number of comics that came out in April of 2017. So it's not like we got to this point by releasing a whole lot more comics. And then the number of graphic novels that came out, this figure is up significantly. This is up about 25%, somewhere in there. It's 65 new graphic novels that came out, more than in April of 2017. But I looked back, and April 2017 does have what I consider to be a fairly light slate of graphic novels in release. So, we did get to a point where we have more comics being sold in units, more graphic novels and comics being sold in dollars this April versus last April. But we did not get there solely on just putting out a whole lot more stuff. And in particular, with regard to comics, we didn't put out as many comics. So the industry is as I mentioned, doing somewhat better. It is some good news for the start of May here. And if you're looking to see other sales charts or these numbers when they're posted, you just go to comics, the monthly comics sales chart page on Comichron.com, and we have many distributors over time, Diamond all the way up to the present day, and in fact past the present day, because we already have some information on what is selling in the industry in May and June. So thanks for taking a look at the comic sales for April 2018, and until next time, we'll see you in the comic shop.